everybody. It's Jeffrey Gurian here with Comedy Matters TV, and I have an exciting interview today on Zoom. I wish it was in person because I'm a big fan of this guy. He's come a long way in a relatively short period of time. And it started, my introduction to him started when the people from Levity Live asked me, they invited me to come to the premiere of his documentary, which was in Manhattan, in the theater in Manhattan. And it was called Care to Laugh. And I was very moved by the documentary. And here with me today is Jesus Trejo. How are you, Jesus? Jesus.
I'm doing great, Jeffrey. Thank you for having me. This is super exciting. And I have to say, I checked out your documentary and I'm a big fan. And man, we have so much in common. It's so crazy. Like I said earlier, that we haven't met before. I feel like we're like best friends. We're into Chopin. We're into comedy. I could use your help as far as, your dentist background. Look at, with my teeth.
You know what? And I was going to jump to that. I wanted to start out by congratulating you for all of your accomplishments in really a relatively short time.
Thank you, man.
And I assume that you've been performing longer than I knew, because I heard that you opened for Russell Peters back in 2013.
Yeah. I've been doing.
So how many years? How many years have you been performing?
13 years. I started when I was 20. I'm 33 now. So I've been performing 13 years.
You're a great example of what it takes to become known in comedy. Hard work. I mean, but what's so interesting for people who haven't seen the documentary, it's based on a beautiful concept. It's based on a concept that you spend time to take care of your parents. And, a lot of people go through life wishing that they paid more attention to their parents. You will never have to feel guilty in your whole life. You will never have to feel guilty about not paying enough attention to your parents.
It's interesting you say that, because it's like I'm very fortunate to have my parents with me, and there are some challenges with time, and since the documentary there's been more challenges, but there's always this feeling of I wish I could do more. I wish I could do this, or I wish I was further along in my career to be able to provide, certain things for them that, they work very hard to achieve in their lifetime. And unfortunately, because of health and, what have you, they weren't able to experience. So it's like, I definitely use that as a way, like a sense of urgency to my craft. I mean, I love it. And, you can't rush art, but at the same time, I take, this funny business very seriously, because of my parents.
And I look at things like in a synchronistic way. Like, if you hadn't done what you did for your parents, which was such a beautiful thing, that was the focus of the documentary. You might not have got a documentary. There's a million comedians out there, but most of them are not devoting their life to their parents. And so that put you in a whole different category. It let people see you in a different light. So by doing something good, you inadvertently wound up helping yourself as well.
Yeah, it's it happened to work out that way, and my parents and my upbringing and my family is a big part of my comedy, and through comedy I just hope I could pay homage and make my family proud through comedy. So yeah, it was nice. I mean, the documentary was nice. It was a way to work with my parents. That was great, to be able to be in front of the camera with my parents. That was a new experience for them. It was a challenging one, but all in all, it was a nice snapshot in time of where I was, and as a comedian, as a caregiver, where my parents were as parents and as caregivees. So like it was interesting. It was an interesting experience.
And how are they doing now, by the way?
They're good. They're hanging in there. It's like, Galileo said the only constant thing in life is change, and, you just have to embrace it. And, sometimes it's not, with age or with health, certain things don't get better. Some things do get better. So it's just, you take it day by day and you learn to appreciate the good things in the moment.
That's all you can do. But look, you found them that beautiful apartment. That was cute. That your mom didn't have to walk down 17 steps anymore.
I
I mean,
know.
that's a blessing, man, that you could do that kind of stuff, and that you were able to incorporate it into your art. That's what's so cool. That's what makes it really different. Like I said, there's millions of comedians, and everybody talks about their family and things that are going on in their life, but it gave you a whole different perspective, and I think it's very special. Um,
Thank you.
was that the reason that it was produced by AARP? Because that I found that very interesting. By the way, I went, and the only one there who wasn't there was you.
Yeah, yeah.
It
There
was
was
in Manhattan.
actually,
It was in Manhattan. Yeah.
if I remember correctly, I was supposed to be there, but things got a little complicated here at home, and I was unable to make it. So that's, the documentary definitely showcases that sometimes I'm not able to take on certain opportunities because of my work here, and not having the means to hire a caregiver and that kind of thing. I think I'm definitely headed in the direction of being able to hire somebody, to help me out as my workload is increasing. But to answer your question, so the documentary Care to Laugh started off as an event and AARP Studios, which I think the first project they took on was Dinner with Don Rickles. This was the second project that they took on at AARP Studios. And what it was a night at the Hollywood Improv, and they wanted to call this event called Care to Laugh because they had partnered with Google, and they wanted to do some research as to what do caregivers need, right? And what came back after the research was time and laughter, because it's like you need so much time to do XYZ, but also laughter, because it can be, again, I keep saying the word challenging, but it's definitely challenging. So to kind of soften the load. So they came up with this idea of having a night where they can bring in, caregivers and caregivees to the Hollywood Improv on a nice, night out on the town, and come to a nice show and have a nice dinner. And headlining that event was Jim Brewer, who I found out that night that he too is a caregiver, or has been a caregiver for some time. So we were able to bond over that, and it was just such a great event. And I think that's where AARP, found out about my situation, because then they wanted to do one in New York. They wanted to do a Care to Laugh in New York, and they called and they said, hey, that was a big hit. Would you like to do a New York date? And when they hit me up, that was around the time where my father started, getting sick, and we were going to the doctor. And I told him that unfortunately I could not, take on that gig because of what was going on. And that's when they came back with the idea. They pitched me the idea. Would you be open, you and your family, to, be a part of this documentary? And they were going to follow me, and they did. They followed me for a year.
I was going to say, I had some experience with it. What was it like for you, having cameras with you all the time?
It's weird, because it's like there's a lot of things that happen there, personal, and
Yes.
and especially in the health in the health department, it's like, there's a lot of things that are, some of it is common knowledge, that I talk about on stage, but other things, we're just like being vulnerable, on cameras is difficult. And I mean, this is something I signed up for, and I don't know that my parents signed up for it, but, I ran it by them, and they were initially hesitant, but then, they were both like, yeah, I think this would be cool. And it was just hard.
It's a hard thing, man. I'll tell you, because you can't say stop the camera now, because
Right.
they're shooting everything, and you don't get to choose what they shoot and what they don't shoot, and there is a lot of awkwardness. But to your credit, I mean, look, your parents came across great. They're such sweet people.
Oh, thank you.
Your dad in particular has such a kind face. It's unbelievable. When he left to go back to Mexico, I guess he went to have more surgery. That was a very touching moment. And you had to take over his business. So you were doing gardening for him. Did that take you out of performing for a while?
Yeah. It took me out of performing back when my mother got diagnosed with a meningioma. When she had the brain tumor, which we thought was cancerous, and
but it turned out not to be. It turned out not to be.
Yeah, it turned out, well, I mean, they were able to extract the tumor. They got most of it out. There's still some in there, and that's kind of like the complications that we've been, dealing with since. But, that took me out of stand-up for a long time. And I didn't know if I was going to get back on stage. And then, I remember everything kind of coming together. But now to experience it a second time, like a second wave of, oh, you're not going to be performing, and who knows how long it's going to be, because, now comedy and my craft is a luxury. It's like I have to provide for my parents. So I'm out there mowing lawns, and it didn't feel good, even though it's something that I grew up doing with my father from a very young age. I was out there working as soon as I was able to pick up a rake and at least rake the leaves. It's like, but it was difficult because, you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. So, I mean, I was out there, and I talk about it in my special. I felt like I was living the American dream backwards. I felt like I did everything right. I went to college, I got educated, I followed my dreams. I went for something bigger, and then I'm mowing lawns. It's like, damn, it didn't feel good, but it's how it was supposed to be. So
yeah, well, it was a necessary thing. They call those humility jobs, because it's very interesting that show business, it's a wonderful thing, but it's all about ego. I always say, when you go in to buy a shirt, the guy just gives you the shirt. He doesn't give you the shirt and a picture of himself.
Right.
And say, hey, this is who I am, and this is what I do. But in our business, you're always telling people who you are and what you do. So there's a really big split between humility and ego. And so it's interesting that you did what you had to do.
I did what I had to do, and I'm giggling because it reminded me of a line that you said in your documentary, where Jay Leno said the worst thing about comedy is making $20K a year,
doing something else. Yeah.
Doing something else, and that's I was able to keep the lights on here in the apartment, but it wasn't doing comedy, and that hurt, because you do have the taste of making an entertainment dollar, and how fulfilling that is. And it's like, I think Patrice O'Neill said this thing, which was like, it's like one entertainment dollar is worth $1 million regular dollars. It's like,
yes.
So it just felt good that I was able to provide for my folks, and and everything through comedy, and then have it, and then it like being hit with like, oh no, that's not going to happen for a while, or who knows if you're going to do it again. It's like, ooh, that hurts.
Well, it's so weird, because comics, in the normal world, when there's no virus, comics complain if they haven't been on stage for a week.
Right.
When you haven't been on stage for 4 months, it's like, I'm doing all kinds of other things. I don't even know if I remember my jokes.
Exactly.
I'm trying to think. Like the other day, I'm like, how do I open? What do I say?
Right.
Like, am I going to do virus material when it finally comes back? I haven't done any Zoom shows. Have you done any of them? Because it feels like this is cool. I like talking on Zoom, but I don't know about performing where there's no audience. How do you feel about that?
I definitely have done some Zoom shows, and at first I was a little nervous, and probably, to be honest, like a little against it. But you know what? It's a sign of the times. I mean, I think I would be doing myself a disservice not to at least attempt it. And I've enjoyed them. It can never replace stand up in a club. I mean, that's for sure. But it's definitely the Splenda to the real sugar. It's like
that's a good example.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't taste great, but hey, it's sweet enough.
In your comedy, and of course, I'm gonna be talking about your special very soon. But in your comedy in general, there was a big transition. First of all, you showed how difficult it was doing open mics. Just to get stage time is crazy. That's why these days a lot of LA comics come to New York, because there are more places to perform in New York than there are in LA. But you showed that there are times when there's even 2 people in the audience and you still have to go up. And I commended you for that in my mind, showing that it's a really hard path. People have no idea what it takes to create a career in comedy. They think you just get up and you tell jokes. When, I got nervous when you got James Corden. my hands started to sweat. I felt like I had to do it, like I had to do it, So, you had them following you to like every small club that you did. Can you talk about that a little bit, like how you prepared for James Corden? Because that was huge.
Yeah, I, I got, I got the call, and I'm practicing and I'm practicing and I'm going up at these, you know, I was passed at the store at the time, but it's like as fairly I got past September 7th, 2012. So even when I got the Jim's Corner show, it's not like I'm getting prime spots. So I'm still going up at,
Was
one or
Mitzi, was Mitzi still auditioning people at the time, or had she been sick already?
yeah, she was sick.
Was it Tommy Morrison?
Yep.
Tommy.
Yeah, it was. I got passed through Tommy, and I met Mitzi, but not in the comedy club setting. It was in her home, but
Mhm.
so even being a paid regular, it's not like I was getting prime spots. So I'm going up at, late night, 1 a.m, or 12:30 if I'm really lucky. So I knew that was a quality. Hold on, let me close the window here.
Go ahead, go ahead.
We're talking about lawnmowers, and then one fires up right behind us. Look at life, man. It's so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was doing spots around town, and I'm trying to get up as much as I can. But the truth of it is, it's like I knew that I could end up at the store at midnight and get a 15-minute spot. So I was trying to cram as much spots as I could, and I think that's what's so great about the comedy community. When you tell them, it's like, hey, I got this thing that I'm working on. I'm on, on such date. I'm doing my set. Comics are very generous that way. They're like, absolutely, go for it. Get your 5 minutes, and a lot of people were very kind. I was able to run it as much as I could, and it didn't make it any easier. I was still nervous because that's just who I am as a performer, as a person. I'm nervous all the time, but it ended up working out. I guess I definitely see where I could do better, and room for improvement. And I was just excited to have my first experience under my belt of a late night set.
Absolutely. It's interesting how people deal with nervousness. I always wanted to write for Richard Lewis, and I wrote jokes for him, and he's never used anybody's jokes. And he said, if I was ever going to use anybody's, they would be yours, because I get him. I told him, if I had a tattoo, it would say "Born to be nervous." Not born to be wild, born to be nervous, because that's everything makes me nervous. And so, but it's interesting that you can suppress that and come out on stage and feel confident or appear confident to other people. It's about mind control. So it's very interesting how you can manage to do that. And in your comedy, when you first started in the doc, you talked a lot about your hair, that you needed a hair clip to hold in place. But then by the end, you wound up shaving your head. Did you do that for style? Did you do that just to make it easier? Like what, was that hard for you to just shave your head?
No, that was nature just, running its course. I had this comb over that I used to like, because I was so embarrassed that I was balding, so I had comb over, and I put hairspray and I comb it one way. And, over time, it was definitely one of my bits. I would like kind of do the thing.
Yeah, right. You were doing that and your hair would flop around. But
yeah, flop around, but eventually it started kind of like receding. So I was down to like this like 2 shoelace type thing in the back. And I was like, oh, this is bad. And I just, I just became, I think, comfortable in my own skin. I was okay, looking goofy. And eventually I wasn't, embarrassed of like being bald. It was just like, this is how I am. Crooked teeth, goofy looking bald guy, or comb over at the time. And, it's like, I remember literally shaving 20 minutes off my act. And as a young comic, you're like, ugh, now what?
That's why I was commenting on it. First of all, it takes a lot of courage to talk about yourself. You mentioned self-deprecating humor. Mm-hmm. We all do it. And it's interesting because we say things about ourselves that if someone said to us in the street, we'd hit them in the head with something. But we say it about ourselves because it makes the audience accept you. Everybody's got things that they would change about them if they could, but there's certain things that you have to accept about yourself. And I think people really appreciate that. When we do that, it makes them feel more comfortable with themselves. It's why it's hard for like very beautiful girls to do comedy, or very handsome guys. They usually wind up growing a beard, trying to hide their looks, because people tend not to laugh at very good looking people. I've
Yeah,
always
I
done
think I think it's challenging for anyone to do comedy, and I think the self-deprecating joke, or at least in my experience, it's like there's something very, very awesome about a self-deprecating joke. For me, I like that I'm able to make fun of me, and somebody like a couple in the audience can share that, because they could have, it might not even be a looks thing, or like somebody's looking at me and judging me like, oh, this guy thinks he's cool, or this guy is that. But as soon as I make fun of myself, it's like the moment where the couple looks at each other, go, ha ha, kind of like, oh yeah,
it. Yeah, exactly.
look at this weirdo. It's like, it's a very disarming kind of thing where it's like, hey, let's put egos aside and let's just laugh. So if I'm able to make fun of myself, I think it breaks the ice in a way that's very conducive to, I speak for myself, for my type of comedy to, come about. People are like, okay, this guy's, he's harmless. Let's laugh at him.
Right. Well, we say it before they do.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
As long as we say it first, it makes it appropriate, which is great. And you get to hang with some really fun people. Like you're at Pauly's house with him. I guess he must have moved, because when I was at his house years ago, he was up in the hills. And
yeah, that was actually an apartment that he had, just like a little artist loft of sorts.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
And
that was in Silver Lake.
And he just came out with that bandana over his head. And I'm like, comics don't care how they look. It's so great. They're just,
No.
however they look, that's how they look.
And that's something really interesting. I think that comes with time and material. Like, you do this, I'm trying to think. It's like the more you do it, you start shedding these layers. It's like an onion. You start peeling it.
The layers of the onion. Chris Rock told me that once. I did the book on the comic strip, and Chris wrote the introduction to it. And he said to me, comedy is the only part of the entertainment business where you're not judged on your looks.
Right, because if we do, it's actually an asset. I believe. Like, imagine if I was like a model or something, and I gain weight, I lose my hair. It's like my career is done. But in my case, it's an asset. Hey, I gained 20 pounds. Let's talk about it. Hey, my teeth are crooked. Let's talk about it. I lost my hair. Hey, more material. So I think that's what makes comedy such a great thing, that whatever unfortunate thing happens in your life, it becomes an asset.
By the way, you can fix those teeth eventually when you're ready. That's an easy thing. If you ever want to do it.
If you got some pointers, I'm all ears, man.
We'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay, then do it.
But
they look like downtown LA from far away, I say,
Yeah, I know. The skyline, I know.
Yeah.
They love that line. So when did you get connected to Levity Live? Because that's huge that you're repped by people at Levity Live. Alex Goodman and Judy Marmel and Ali Reza, Stephen Walker, all those guys. They're such a cool group of people. How did that come out?
Yeah, Levity has been very kind. I've worked with, different, or at least met different managers along the way. But from Judy to Alex, and it goes on and on. The list is long. Everyone over there has been always very kind to me, and I've just enjoyed chatting with them. But I think I was I remember I met Alex when I was doing a taping of Uproarious. I did a set for Uproarious, and I was kind of I didn't have a manager at the time, and we met and connected and started working together. And then we found ourselves in Montreal, for New Face. Yep.
Oh, so you did New Faces. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I did New Faces. Well, I went with Roast Battle back in 2000, I think. Yeah, so I did Roast Battles in 2015. I went down there to help out with like the wave and that kind of stuff.
Oh, those guys are great. Jeremiah?
Yeah. I went down there with Jeremiah, actually, that first year. And so that was my first year. The second year I went back, that was 2016. And then I went a third year in 2017 for Variety Magazine. And then that was the last time I was at Montreal. So I was very lucky that I got to go 3 years back to back.
No, that's huge. I've been going for 28 years. And
wow, that's awesome.
Last year I brought my VIP pass from 1992 and freaked them all out. You couldn't believe it. It looked brand new. It wasn't even on a lanyard. They used a string in those days, just a string, and it was written in magic marker. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
this is the first year that they're not going to be able to do it because of the pandemic.
Oh, really? Or
Yeah,
are they?
it's
Wow.
canceled. They may have something in the fall, but that has to be, we have to wait to see what happens, how things transpire. So let's progress now. I want to talk about your Showtime special because this is absolutely huge. Now, tell me, I always like backstory. How did it come about? How did the Showtime special come about? And by the way, I know it was produced by Comedy Dynamics, which is also huge. Brian Volk Weiss actually came to visit me one day at my place in New York, and we did a great interview together. He's a great guy. So how did that happen for you?
Yeah, so I had a meeting with Showtime, and we talked, and we had been talking for a while, and went out for dinner, and we talked, and they they had expressed interest in maybe working together in the future, and
Well, have they
that,
seen the documentary?
no,
Oh,
I don't believe that.
oh, really?
No.
So, okay, because I thought that the doc led to that. So they just saw your talent.
Yeah, I don't think they saw it. I could be wrong, but it was, we had talked about we had talked about, like, working in some capacity, and I expressed that I wanted, a dream of mine was to have our special, and I think about a year kind of went by after that, and there was an offer. There was an offer that came in for an hour special, and I was excited. But then, as an artist, you go through all these emotions. Am I ready? Is it too soon? It's like, sure, do I have any business doing it? This is like a dream of mine, but maybe I should wait. 13 years in comedy is still very new, in my opinion. I should wait. And I kind of went back and forth, and long story short, we had this special, and it was so great. I think the journey of it, because I took it so seriously. I had weekends. I'm working my material, and during the year that I was working it out, I also had some offers to go to Mexico and perform. So I was performing in Spanish, right? And I was doing the same hour, and it was very interesting, because at first I'm like, I don't know if I should be doing my Spanish sets while I'm getting ready for this, for this special. But then I thought about
it. Because it might confuse you, you mean? Were you concerned that you're thinking in two languages?
Yeah, like the confusion of it, but it's like, oh man, I think it can only help me, because if I can look at the same premise from two different angles, I think it would be very beneficial to me. And there were some tags that I was able to get just because I was looking at it from a different angle, same premise, different angle. And, I tell you, I was very excited that I ended up doing a handful of shows that year in Spanish, which was cool. But I worked on it a bunch. It's
really hard to do, though, because comedy doesn't translate word for word.
It doesn't. You lose a lot of.
Interesting that you could do that.
Yeah, it just took a little extra work. It's like some double entendres didn't translate, wordplay. Some of it was like, it just doesn't work. The wordplay, double entendre, and similes and metaphors are different. So I was able to explain it. It felt weird because the timing is like, I kind of had to go like a long route to get to the punchline, as opposed to economy of words, set up and punch. But I just kept getting ready, and I think that really helped me, to be honest. That helped me tremendously. And once it was time for me to record the special, and then I would go down to this office, like this WeWork type situation, and I had this huge whiteboard, and I would like lay out my whole set, and just so I could see it visually. And after a while, I kind of landed on this thing where I'm like, you know what? I need to approach this hour special like a play, like 3 acts. And I'm like, if I can show up on the day of the taping with 3 bullet points, a beginning, middle, and end, I'm golden, right? It's just all repetition. And that's how I approached it. The first 20 minutes is like, I'm from Long Beach. This is who I am. The second 20 minutes is like that's where you hear more about my parents and who they are. So I've set up these characters, I've defined them, you know who my parents are, and the last 20 minutes kind of ends with, you know, a story that capitalizes on all the variables that I defined in the first two acts. So it's like when I bring my dad into it, when I, you know, when I'm struggling to get through the marathon, it's like, this is all stuff that you've already been acquainted with in my previous 40 minutes. And I capitalize, basically it's a 20-minute callback bit, you know, that I capitalize on everything.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I noticed a very interesting thing about a shift in your material. That in your earlier days and in the doc, you were doing more jokes, and then you became a storyteller in the Showtime special, which is really a different type of stand-up comedy.
Absolutely.
And it's very hard to do both. It's hard to create that shift. Were you aware of it? Did you do that purposely? Because that marathon story was a long story, and it
20
takes
minutes.
Yeah, and you know what? It takes courage to do that, because if you do a story and the audience doesn't buy it, and fortunately they did, they loved it. But I've seen comics get stuck in a story that isn't really working for them. And once you're in that story, it's a really hard thing. So what was your feeling about switching from telling jokes to doing stories?
I think I'm so enamored, like I'm so enamored with like the joke, the setup punch, the economy of words. I'm like obsessed. I mean, my whole,
Mm-hmm.
like it's probably an unhealthy obsession that I have with
It's a
just
real
like,
art form.
yeah, I'm obsessed with it. And I think if you go back and look at my special, I'm even like there's tweets that I've sent out in the past that made it on the special, and they're in there. They're within the context of a story, but they're, if you look at it, they're still set a punch. They're like little nuggets that I drop, you know, in there to kind of keep the story afloat. But I, yeah, it was a way. It's like, you know, this is my calling card. I don't know if I'll ever have a opportunity to have another hour special. That's the way I looked at it. I'm like, I got to pull all the stops. So I went everything from the opening. It was such an abstract comedy bit that was the newest joke on the special. That was like
And I
months.
love that the hourglass joke.
Right.
That's really my kind of humor. I like absurdity.
Right.
And I found it very interesting that you started with that, and then after you finish, you go, "Hey, I'm Jesus Trejo," and then went into like an introduction, as opposed to doing a standard starting with the introduction and then leading into material. You started out with material, and the hourglass thing really got them. Like, I'm 13 minutes light on
Right.
sand, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So my
Great concept.
thank you. And in the editing, I had a callback set. You know, for that was the longest running callback from beginning to end, and it was like, I think like 90% of the way towards the end of it. That's where I had this huge callback, but I ended up taking that bit out where I had the callback, and I sacrificed a big laugh and a really satisfying callback in order to keep the integrity and of the hour special that I was trying to put. But yeah, it's like I set out to do the 5 minutes, just, you know, not to hook them, but basically just like, you know, stand up observational and just hypothetical. And then it's like, hey, my name is Jesus Trejo. And then we get into like real, you know, it's very autobiographical. Act outs. I have some act outs in there. So it's like, I try to put every element of stand up that I love in there. And hopefully it, you know, it showed.
It did show. It really worked. It was very special. I enjoyed it. I watched it a couple of times.
You're very kind. Thank you.
And what also interested me is in preparation. Now, most of the time when you go to a comedy club, you get 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. How did you run an hour of material? Like, where did you go? Were there clubs that gave you an hour of stage time to run your set?
Well, in LA, I think I worked out. I mean, I was going down to the Improv and, you know, wherever I could get up. But I think the Comedy Store, you know, I would get opening spots, 9 p.m. opening spots, and those are 15 minutes. So I, you know, as I'm going to the store, I told myself that I would only do, I wouldn't repeat the same set, just so I could have, I would rotate, you know, in 15 minute increments, but I still was having a tough time because I gave myself the, I don't know if it was a dumb task, but it's like I kind of locked into the 20-minute thing, and I'm like, this is not going to work. So, but at the very least, I knew that I had 15 minutes. I would do, 4 different sets at the store, and I kind of rotate them. But I really got to work out the hour set in the clubs. I was going to Funny Bones. I was doing improvs on the road, and
They gave you an hour though when you were on the road. They gave you a
Yep.
full hour. See,
Yep.
that's nice. There's a couple of clubs in New York that do that for people when they have a special coming up. They actually, like the comic strip that does that a lot. They give people a whole hour out of respect because they're taping a big special coming up, and they announce it to the audience because the audience doesn't expect one comic to stay up for an hour.
Right. Yeah, and I was able to do that in the belly room. So it's like All Things Comedy set up a show early on in the year just to run the hour that I had then, which was very different than the hour that I ended up running later in the year, right before I ran the hour on stage. So I remember, I think the last club weekend that I did was Dayton, Ohio. So Dayton, Ohio was the last week that I ran it, and I was able to run 5 shows there. And the last show that I did there, I'm like, oh boy, I don't know. It was pretty light, and I had some hiccups. I'm like, I don't know about this. I had a heckler too, so I'm like, I don't know. I was kind of like let down. I'm like, I was supposed to work on the hour, but it didn't work out that way.
Do you tape all your sets?
Yes, even if I don't tape my sets, I do like audio, like I do audio recording.
Oh yeah, well that's what I meant basically. I didn't always mean video. Sometimes you videotape, but you always audio, right?
Yeah, always audio. I keep all my sets. That's part of my workflow, and I think that's kind of like what I missed most about stand-up during quarantine, because my workflow was, you perform, and then I got to listen to them on the ride home. I listened to them in my car. And then in the morning, I wake up, go to the coffee shop, grab a cup of coffee, and just kind of listen to them and jot down notes and, edit my running file of jokes that I have on my computer, or just, write them in my little notebook. So, yeah, recording my sets audio is super important, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think for me too. I'm always interested in process. Everybody does things in their own unique way. The way they write, the way they rehearse. Some people memorize, some people just take a concept and go on stage with it. I can never do that. I need to know what I'm going to say, basically, before I go up there,
Yeah.
So it's always interesting. I think it's interesting to other people to hear your process. Did you get picked on a lot? You talk a lot about getting mugged in the street. That happened to you a lot?
Yeah, like I would get picked on a lot, from a young age. Kids are,
Kids are cruel.
Yeah, kids are cruel, but I think that's kind of where the comedy thing comes into play, because it's like you strengthen your comedy chops, because if a kid's gonna, like, in a fight, I couldn't hold my own, but going back and forth, roasting style as we know it now, we used to call it snapping back then.
Yes, yeah.
But I can snap all day, so it's like, if I'm gonna get an ass whooping, there's no way I'm gonna get out of the ass whooping. I'm gonna make the other kid, tear up, because I'm hurting his feelings. I can't hurt him physically, but I hurt his feelings, kind of.
I'm going to ask you about that too, about like roast battles. They've changed over the years. I was the main writer for the Friars roast for about 12 years.
Oh, amazing.
And I used to ask the person being honored, being roasted, is there anything that you don't want us to joke about that might hurt your feelings? Because I never wanted to hurt anybody.
Sure.
But today, the intention is to try to hurt the other person's feelings, to say the meanest things. If somebody has a sibling who just passed away, they joke about that and stuff. And so, to me, I don't get that kind of humor. It's kind of mean-spirited. What do you feel about that?
I think it's just, it's just where the sport has ended up. Is that you have, boxing back in the day, it was very much like a certain way, and now we have the UFC, so things do progress.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's very much with like the snapping and roast battle. It used to be, gloves and kind of a Irish stance, and now it's Now it's, all out, just,
No holds barred. Anything
no holds
goes.
barred.
You could say the
That's right.
meanest things you want. I've asked people, how do they handle it? And they say, and in the beginning it hurts, and then they get used to it.
Yeah, it's like you also need to battle with somebody who you respect and you're friends with, because it's like, even though you say mean things, at the end of the day, you're still appreciating their joke writing and what they're able to say and maneuver premise and what they're doing. So it's like, all the roast battle stuff that I did, early on, I was able to, not feel too bad, because it's like I'm looking at my opponent's like way of saying a joke. I'm like, oh wow, like that was brilliant. It's like, and then they say stuff like, oh, and that also hurt, and then I was able to rebuttal, and I don't know, it's just a nice back and forth in comedy.
And it usually ends with a hug anyway.
Absolutely.
And before we end, I have to compliment you on your ripped jeans thing, because I have a whole bit on ripped jeans. I love talking it like, why are jeans the only article of clothing you can wear all ripped up and it's perfectly acceptable, right?
Right.
It was so cute that your mom sewed up your ripped jeans.
She's adorable, man.
On your way. I know. That was completely amazing. And I like, at the end of your special, you did an RIP to Mitzi and to Brody Stevens. Were you close with Brody?
Brody, yes. I mean, he was one of the first guys at the store who was just so kind and generous. He was always, I mean, even as a door guy, when I worked the door, he would stop before going into the original room and stop, how are you doing? Or if he saw that I posted something, loved it, he was just the kindest soul. And sometimes I would run into him at a coffee shop and we'd talk, it was unexpected. I'm like, oh, Brody, what's up? And we'd talk for an hour, and it's like, all right, man, I'll see you at the store tonight. So it was very heartbreaking, when the news broke. But
absolutely, it was a very nice touch that you did that. It's just very, very kind. The comedy community is very special. I found out when I was in the hospital with COVID pneumonia, the comedy community really rallied around me. Ron Bennington announced it on Sirius XM. And I literally got hundreds and hundreds of messages from people in the comedy community, and people like Bill Burr and Nick Kroll and John Mulaney and Bert Kreischer and Jim Norton posted like amazing stuff. And it really helps to know that people are thinking about you. I'm a big believer in the power of thought and the power of prayer. And when so many people are focusing their energy on one thing, I really believe that it has an effect. And so you had mentioned that earlier about the comedy community being very supportive and being very special. And it's a shame that sometimes we have to be so sick before we know that, right? that people don't say it to each other all the time. But it's a nice feeling to know that people care about you and that you've touched them in some way and that they think about you. And I could tell by the people in your doc that they feel that way about you too. So that's really, really very cool. Really very cool. What do you have coming up in ending this interview? What would you like people to know about what you're doing, and where can they see Jesus Trejo? And are you related to Danny Trejo?
No relationship to Danny Trejo.
Okay.
I met him once back when I was in 10th grade at a car show. It was like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, is it a common name? Is it a common name?
Not very common. I haven't met too many Danny. I mean, not Danny. I haven't met too many Trejos, so it was pretty cool.
I just thought I'd ask. But so, what do you have coming up, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so I have, my 1 hour special streaming now on Showtime. You can check that out. You can sign up for the 30-day pass and cancel anytime. Check out the special. There's a bunch of other specials on there too. I have a season 2 of Tacos con Todo, web series that we're doing with First We Feast. And
those super hot tacos, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I saw that. Very cool.
Yeah, so I have that coming up and a lot of other cool things. Please check out my website, JesusTrejo.com, and you can find all my socials on there. Instagram at Jesus Trejo, the number 1, and Twitter at Jesus Trejo. And Jeffrey, I have to say I'm so happy that you're feeling better now, and I appreciate you so much for this interview. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm so happy that you made time to be with me today. It was really great, and I can't wait for people to see it. and to watch your special. I wish you continued success in everything that you do. You deserve it. You're a funny dude, man.
Thank you so much. Likewise, Jeffrey, and I hope I get to, buy you a cup of coffee when I'm in New York next time.
Absolutely. We'll make sure that that happens. Hey guys, thanks for watching Comedy Matters TV. To check out some of our other videos, click on the boxes on either side of me. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Not just for me, but for my parents.